The first Velthari ship arrived on a Tuesday. Commander Raven Coltrane watched the feeds from Luna Base as the massive crystalline vessel, a kilometer of twisted spires and pulsing veins, materialized just beyond Earth's outer defensive perimeter. No warp signature, no dimensional tier. One moment, empty space. The next, an alien dreadnought that made humanity's finest battlecruisers look like children's toys. "Sir, they're not responding to any communication attempts," reported Lieutenant Vasquez from the comm station. Her voice carried the controlled tension of someone trying very hard not to panic. Coltrane's weathered hands gripped the command rail as more ships flickered into existence. 5, 10, 30, each one unique in its organic architecture, yet unmistakably part of the same fleet. The Velthari had found them. 3 years. That's how long Earth's governments had known this day would come. Ever since the deep space probe Magellan had transmitted its final, terrifying message from the Kepler system, crystalline cities built into asteroids, ships that moved like living things, and technology that bent matter to its will. The probe's AI had managed one coherent analysis before going dark. They stripped worlds bare. Nothing left but dead rock. Admiral Kessler wants a full tactical assessment. Vasquez continued. Fleet Command is mobilizing everything we have. Everything they had. Coltrane almost laughed. Humanity's everything consisted of 43 combat vessels, most of them barely 20 years out of dry dock, cobbled together from the frantic militarization efforts that followed Magellan's warning. The crown jewel was the Prometheus, Earth's first and only dreadnought, armed with experimental plasma cannons and protected by shields that had never been tested against. Alien weapons dot against the Velthari armada, now darkening Earth's sky. It might as well be a paper airplane. "Lieutenant, patch me through to General Martinez at CENTCOM." Coltrane kept his voice steady. Professional, his crew needed to see strength, not the cold dread spreading through his chest. While Vasquez worked, Coltrane studied the alien formation. The ships weren't positioning for battle, they were spreading out, taking orbital positions around Earth like a net. No communication, no ultimatum, no dramatic speeches about surrender. The Velthari had done this before, and they moved with the casual efficiency of exterminators setting up equipment. "Sir, General Martinez is on the line." The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing the grizzled face of Earth's supreme military commander. Dark circles under his eyes told the story of 3 sleepless days since the first long range. Sensors had detected the approaching fleet. "Raven, tell me you have good news." Martinez said without preamble. "Negative, General. They're not here to talk. 73 ships and counting, all taking strategic positions. This is a resource extraction operation." Martinez nodded grimly. "Intelligence confirms it. We've got mining probes launching from their carriers, heading for the asteroid belt. They're also scanning Earth's crust, deep penetration scans, looking for rare earth deposits." "What about evacuation? Where will we go?" Martinez's laugh was bitter. "Every habitable world within 50 light years has the same scorch marks we found in the Kepler system. These bastards have been strip mining the galaxy for centuries." A new alarm chimed on Coltrane's console. Long-range sensors showed smaller Velthari craft, sleek, predatory things breaking away from the main fleet. They moved like hunting packs, accelerating toward Earth's orbital installations. "General, they're moving on our infrastructure. Luna Base, the orbital refineries, the communication satellites. Then we fight." Martinez said simply, "Every ship, every weapon, every last human being with a pulse. They want our world. They'll have to pry it from our cold, dead fingers." The transmission cut out, leaving Coltrane alone with his thoughts and the growing alien presence outside. He thought of his daughter Emma, safe in the underground shelters of Colorado, safe for now. The Velthari had made one crucial mistake. They assumed humanity would respond like every other species they'd encountered, with fear, with desperate attempts at negotiation, with the paralysis of the doomed. They had never encountered a species that had spent its entire history perfecting the art of killing its own kind. The attack came at dawn. Captain Nix Holloway felt the retribution shudder as Velthari plasma bolts hammered against her cruiser's shields. Through the viewport, she watched Earth's orbital defense platforms, humanity's pride and joy just days ago, explode in brilliant flowers of fire and debris, shields at 60%. Called out her tactical officer, Commander Pike. His synthetic arm moved in perfect coordination with his flesh one as he worked the weapon's console. "Those plasma streams are unlike anything in our simulations." Holloway gritted her teeth as another volley struck home. The Velthari attack craft were impossibly fast. Their crystalline hull seeming to bend light around them, they moved in perfect coordination, like a school of fish or a flock of birds, anticipating each other's movements with inhuman precision. Target the lead group. Fire everything. The Retribution's railguns thundered, sending tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed toward the alien formation. For a moment, Holloway felt a surge of hope as the projectile struck true, then watched in horror as the Velthari craft absorbed the impacts with barely a flicker in their energy readings. The slugs are being integrated into their hull structure, reported Lieutenant Torres from the science station. Their ships aren't just protected by armor. They're actively converting our attacks into additional mass. A proximity alarm screamed. 3 Velthari fighters had broken through the defensive screen, and were closing fast on the Retributions. Port side. Holloway could see them clearly now through the bridge viewport, sleek predators that pulsed with internal light, moving with an organic grace that spoke of intelligence far beyond human understanding. Evasive maneuvers, all available. Power to starboard thrusters. The cruiser lurched, but not fast enough. Plasma beams lanced out from the alien fighters, striking the ship's engineering section. The lights flickered, and Holloway felt the subtle change in the deck's vibration that meant they lost at least one reactor. Hull breach on Deck 7, Pike reported. Containment fields are holding, but we've lost 20% power. Through the tactical display, Holloway watched the broader battle unfold with growing despair. Humanity's fleet was fighting with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. The Prometheus had engaged 3 Velthari heavy cruisers and was holding its experimental weapons actually penetrating alien shielding. But for every small victory, there were a dozen defeats. The cruiser Devastator broke apart under concentrated fire, its crew of 800 gone in an instant. The destroyer Warhawk managed to ram one of the alien craft, both ships disappearing in a mutual fireball. But 2 more Velthari vessels immediately moved to fill the gap. Incoming transmission from Admiral Kessler. The Admiral's face appeared on screen, blood running from a cut on his forehead. Behind him, the Prometheus's bridge showed signs of battle damage. All ships were being systematically dismantled. These bastards have been doing this for centuries. They know exactly how to neutralize conventional tactics. Orders, sir? Holloway asked, even as another plasma burst sent shockwaves through her ship. Fall back to Earth orbit. Defensive pattern Delta. We're going to make them bleed for every meter. Kessler's expression hardened. And prepare for ramming speed. If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as possible. The transmission cut out just as a massive explosion lit up the tactical display. The battle cursor Victory had taken a direct hit to its reactor core, becoming a brief new star against the backdrop of space. Ma'am, Pike called out, sensors are detecting something else. The Velthari are launching what looked like transport pods toward Earth's surface. Holloway pulled up the sensor data and felt her blood turn to ice. Hundreds of small craft were breaking through Earth's atmosphere, aimed at population centers and industrial complexes. This wasn't just a battle for orbital supremacy, it was a full-scale invasion. Give me a line to CENTCOM, she ordered. General Martinez needs to know they're coming down hard. As the Retribution limped toward Earth orbit, joining the ragged remains of humanity's once proud fleet, Holloway caught sight of something that made her pause. Debris from destroyed Velthari ships wasn't behaving like normal wreckage. Instead of floating freely, the crystalline fragments were slowly drifting toward Earth. As if drawn by some invisible force, Torres analyzed that debris pattern. Ma'am, this is impossible. The alien wreckage is exhibiting controlled movement. It's not falling toward Earth, it's being guided there. Holloway stared at the tactical display as understanding dawned. The Velthari weren't just strip mining Earth's resources. They were also harvesting something else, their own dead. Whatever these aliens were, whatever drove them across the galaxy, to consume world after world, they never left anything behind, not even their own casualties. The implication sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with the failing life support systems. 3 days into the invasion, Earth was dying. Dr. Alexei Kowalski pressed his face against the reinforced window of the Colorado Mountain Complex, watching alien harvesters strip mine the Rockies with mechanical precision. The crystalline machines moved like massive insects, their cutting beams reducing centuries-old mountains to their component elements in a matter of hours. The oceanic extraction is even worse, reported Dr. Sarah Kim, her voice hollow with exhaustion. The marine biologist had watched helplessly as Velthari processing ships began draining the Pacific, their gravity manipulators pulling billions of gallons of seawater into orbital refineries. They're not just taking the water, they're breaking it down at the molecular level. Oxygen, hydrogen, trace minerals, nothing wasted. General Martinez stood at the situation table, his uniform rumpled and stained. The past 72 hours had aged him a decade. What's our casualty report? Colonel Rivers, his aide, consulted a blood-stained tablet. Conservative estimate, 200 million dead or missing. The Velthari ground forces don't seem interested in prisoners. They eliminate anything that resists and process anything that doesn't. The ground invasion had been swift and merciless. Velthari's shock troop stall. Insectoid creatures in form-fitting crystalline armor had targeted military installations and population centers with surgical precision. But these weren't soldiers in any human sense. They moved with a single-minded efficiency of worker ants, processing resistance with the same mechanical indifference they showed to mining ore. Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Walsh. We're receiving a transmission from the European Underground Command. General Dubois is requesting immediate assistance. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the haggard face of Francis, military commander. Behind him, the command bunker showed obvious signs of damage. Martinez, we're being overrun. They've broken through our defensive lines and are deploying some kind of atmospheric processor. Over Paris, the city. The city is being dissolved. Martinez closed his eyes briefly. How long do you have? Perhaps 6 hours before the underground bunkers are compromised. They seem to know exactly where we are. Dubois paused, his voice breaking slightly. My daughter was in the city when they began processing. She's gone, Martinez. They turned her into raw materials. Dr. Kowalski felt his stomach lurch. The reports from the surface had been almost too horrific to believe. The Velthari weren't just stripping Earth of its resources, they were processing everything organic as well. Trees, animals, humans, all converted into base elements and stored in their massive orbital refineries. General, Dr. Kim spoke up. There might be something else we need to consider. The orbital debris analysis is showing some disturbing patterns. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's orbital space. What had once been filled with human satellites and space stations was now dominated by Velthari processing platforms, and something else, a growing field of wreckage that seemed to pulse with faint energy. Their dead aren't staying dead, Kim continued. The crystalline debris from destroyed Velthari ships is showing signs of regeneration, molecular restructuring. It's as if they're rebuilding themselves from their own remains. Martinez stared at the display. Are you telling me we can't actually kill them? Not permanently, at least, not with conventional weapons. But there's something else. Kim highlighted a section of the debris field. They're not just regenerating randomly. The debris is forming specific patterns, almost like a neural network. Dr. Kowalski finished, understanding flooding through him. They're not individual beings. They're part of a collective consciousness, and their ships are extensions of that network. A new alarm began blaring. Colonel Rivers rushed to his console, his face pale. Sir, orbital platforms are detecting massive energy buildup from the alien fleet. They're preparing something big. The main screen shifted to show the Velthari armada in high orbit. The crystalline ships were repositioning themselves into a perfect geometric pattern, their surfaces beginning to glow with increasing intensity. At the center of the formation, the largest vessel, easily 5 kilometers long, was opening like a flower, revealing a core that pulsed with terrible purpose. Planetary sterilization array, Martinez whispered. They're going to cook the entire surface. Dr. Kim worked frantically at her station. Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever they're building up to, it's enough to boil the oceans and strip the atmosphere. Time to activation. At current charge rate, 18 hours. Martinez turned to face his remaining staff. These men and women represented the last organized military command on Earth. Beyond these walls, scattered resistance groups fought, delaying actions against impossible odds, buying time for civilians to reach the deep shelters. But there was nowhere deep enough to hide from what was coming. Options. Colonel Rivers spoke first. The remaining fleet units could attempt a suicide run. If we can penetrate their formation and detonate our reactors against their primary weapon. Negative impact probability. Dr. Kowalski interrupted. Their defensive systems adapt to quickly. We've already seen conventional attacks proven effective. Then what do you suggest? Doctor? Martinez's voice carried the weight of a dying world. Kowalski looked around the room, seeing the same desperate determination in each face that he felt in his own heart. Humanity had always been at its most dangerous when cornered, when faced with extinction. They had one advantage the Velthari couldn't predict or adapt to. They were willing to do absolutely anything to survive. "We stop fighting like soldiers," he said quietly, "and start fighting like humans." The plan was insane. Commander Marcus Webb crouched in the ruins of what had once been downtown Seattle. His squad of 12 soldiers watching Velthari harvesters methodically dismantle the Space Needle. The aliens worked with terrifying efficiency, their molecular disruptors reducing the iconic structure to component atoms that were immediately processed and transported to orbital collectors. "Target acquired," whispered Sergeant Luna Rodriguez through the comm. Her sniper scope tracked a Velthari work unit, a crystalline creature, roughly humanoid in shape, but clearly artificial, awaiting orders. Webb checked his chronometer. In 14 hours, the alien sterilization ray would activate, turning Earth's surface into molten slag. But Dr. Kowalski's analysis had revealed a crucial weakness. The Velthari collective consciousness required constant communication between units. Disrupt that network, and the individual components would become vulnerable. The solution was typically human in its brutal simplicity. Remember, Webb transmitted to his team, "We're not trying to win a battle. We're creating chaos, maximum disruption, maximum noise. Make them commit resources to hunting us down." Across the globe, similar teams were preparing similar attacks. Not on military targets, the Velthari had already neutralized most of those. Instead, they were targeting the aliens' resource extraction operations with coordinated harassment designed to force a response. "Execute." Rodriguez's rifle cracked, sending an experimental tungsten core round through the Velthari workers' central mass. The alien staggered, but didn't fall until the round detonated, releasing its payload of concentrated electromagnetic pulse. The creature's crystalline structure flickered and went dark. Immediately, alarm signals began emanating from the nearby harvester units. The coordinated efficiency faltered as individual Velthari began moving erratically, their connection to the collective disrupted. "It's working," Rodriguez reported. "They're confused." But not for long. Within minutes, Velthari combat units were converging on their position from 3 directions. These weren't workers, they were soldiers, armed with plasma weapons and protected by personal shielding that shimmered like heat haze. "Fall back," Webb ordered. "Remember the plan." His team scattered through the ruins, each soldier carrying a backpack full of improvised explosives and electromagnetic charges. The Velthari pursued, their movements swift and predatory, but they were no longer coordinating perfectly. Individual hunters could be isolated, confused, led into ambushes. Corporal Jean triggered his first charge as a Velthari soldier rounded a corner, the electromagnetic burst shorting out the alien systems long enough for Jean to put 3 armor-piercing rounds through its core. The creature collapsed, its crystalline structure beginning to dissolve. "Webb to all units," the commander transmitted. "Phase 2 is go." Across the city, a dozen hidden charges detonated simultaneously. Not enough to damage the Velthari significantly, but enough to create interference patterns that disrupted their communications network across a 50-kilometer radius. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Without their collective coordination, individual Velthari units began behaving erratically. Some continued their assigned tasks mechanically. Others froze in place, apparently awaiting orders that never came. A few began attacking anything that moved, including other Velthari. "Holy shit," Rodriguez breathed over the comm. "They're turning on each other." Webb watched through his scope as the Velthari work units encountered each other near a half-dismantled building. Without the guiding influence of the collective consciousness, they apparently couldn't recognize each other as allies. Plasma fire erupted between them, both creatures fighting with mechanical precision until they simultaneously destroyed each other. But the victory was short-lived. High overhead, Velthari air units were moving to restore communication nodes, their advanced systems already adapting to human interference. Worse, the orbital fleet was beginning to respond. "All teams, we've got incoming," Webb transmitted. "Orbital bombardment, 30 seconds." The plasma beams lanced down from space like pillars of green fire, each one precise enough to hit a city block, but powerful enough to vaporize everything. Within a square kilometer, Webb felt the heat wash over his position as downtown Seattle began to burn. Sergeant Martinez's voice crackled over the comm, distorted by interference. Team 7 is gone. Took a direct hit. Rodriguez, Jean, do you copy? Silence. Webb closed his eyes briefly. 8 soldiers dead in the first exchange, but their sacrifice had proven the concept. The Velthari could be disrupted, confused, turned against themselves. Humanity's new tactics were working. They just weren't working fast enough. All surviving teams, initiate Phase 3, Webb commanded. It's time to get brutal. Phase 3 was the option nobody wanted to consider. If the Velthari were a collective consciousness, then attacking their processing centers wasn't enough. They needed to target the network itself, the orbital debris field where the alien collective was rebuilding itself from its own dead. It would require getting ships close enough to the debris field to detonate nuclear weapons at point-blank range. A suicide mission against an enemy that had already adapted to every conventional attack humanity could mount. Webb looked up at the burning sky, where the few remaining human ships were beginning their final approach. Captain Holloway's Retribution led the charge, its battered hull scarred by days of combat. Behind it, the last destroyers and cruisers of Earth's fleet accelerated toward the alien formation. With their reactors pushed beyond safe limits, they would never return. But they might just take enough of the collective consciousness with them to give the ground teams a fighting chance. Webb keyed his comm one last time. All ground units, prepare for electromagnetic storm. When those ships detonate, we'll have maybe 10 minutes before the Velthari network restabilizes. Make them count. In the distance, orbital fire continued to rain down, turning Earth cities into funeral pyres. But for the first time since the invasion began, the aliens were responding to human actions instead of executing their own plan. It was a start. Captain Nix Holloway felt the retribution shudder as it penetrated the outer edge of the Velthari debris field. Around her, the last 17 ships of Earth's fleet pushed deeper into the forest of crystalline wreckage, their hulls scraping against alien fragments that pulse with malevolent intelligence. The debris is reacting to our presence, reported Commander Pike, his synthetic arms sparking from battle damage. Energy readings are spiking across the entire field. Through the viewport, Holloway watched the seemingly dead alien wreckage begin to glow. Crystalline fragments the size of city blocks were connecting to each other, forming geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Velthari collective consciousness was rebuilding itself in real time, using the remains of every ship humanity had managed to destroy. Distance to primary target, 8 kilometers and closing, called out Lieutenant Torres. But ma'am, the path is sealing behind us. Those fragments are actively blocking our escape route. Holloway had expected as much. This was a one-way mission and everyone aboard knew it. The 17 ships represented the last organized military force. Humanity possessed 8,000 men and women who had volunteered to ram their vessels into the heart of the alien network and detonate every nuclear warhead they carried simultaneously. Fleet command to all ships. Admiral Kessler's voice crackled over the comm from the bridge of the dying Prometheus. Final approach begins now. Remember, we need to penetrate to the central node before detonation. If we blow too early, the collective will simply root around the damage. The central node was visible now, a massive construct of interwoven crystalline spires that stretched for kilometers in every direction. It pulsed with the combined consciousness of billions of Velthari entities, coordinating the invasion of Earth and countless other worlds simultaneously. Contact, Pike shouted. Velthari interceptors closing fast. The alien fighter craft emerged from the debris field like wasps from a disturbed nest. Unlike the organic ships humanity had faced before, these were clearly constructed from the wreckage itself, predatory assemblages of crystalline shards that moved with deadly purpose. All ships engaged, Kessler commanded. The retributions. Railguns thundered, sending tungsten slugs through a formation of alien interceptors. This time, the projectiles found their mark, shattering crystalline hulls into glittering fragments. But the fragments didn't drift away, they immediately began reassembling themselves into new configurations. They're adapting faster than we can destroy them, Torres reported. Whatever we hit just becomes part of something else. Around them, the fleet was taking massive casualties. The destroyer Vengeance exploded under concentrated fire, its crew of 400 vaporized instantly. The cruiser Defiant managed to ram through to alien interceptors before being overwhelmed by a swarm of rebuilt fighters. But they were making progress, kilometer by kilometer. the surviving ships pushed deeper into the debris field. The battlecruiser Sovereign led the charge, its heavy armor absorbing punishment that would have destroyed smaller vessels. Behind it, the carrier Independence launched its final squadron of fighters, 36 pilots who knew they would never return to their ship. Holloway, this is Commander Reese from the Sovereign. Came a transmission. We're taking heavy damage, but we can reach the node. Recommend you fall back and cover our approach. Negative, Holloway replied. We all go in together, or we don't go in at all. The alien interceptors were becoming more aggressive now, pressing their attacks with suicidal intensity. They seemed to understand what the human fleet was attempting, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to stop it. A massive impact shook the Retribution as an alien fighter rammed directly into the bridge. Holloway felt the deck buckle beneath her feet as emergency klaxons began wailing. Half her bridge crew was gone, vaporized by the explosion. Pike was unconscious, trapped under a fallen support beam. Torres was still at her station, blood streaming from a head wound, frantically working to maintain navigation. Hull breach on all decks. Torres reported, we're losing atmosphere fast. How long until we reach the node? 3 minutes, assuming we don't break apart first. Holloway looked around the ruined bridge, seeing the faces of the few surviving crew members, young faces, mostly men and women who had signed up to explore the stars and instead found themselves fighting for humanity's survival. All remaining crew to escape pods, she ordered. Ma'am? Torres looked confused. That's an order. Get to the pods and get clear. I'm taking her in alone. Captain, the ship won't function without. The ship only needs to function for 3 more minutes. Holloway's voice was calm, resolved, and it only needs one person to trigger the nuclear charges. As her crew reluctantly evacuated, Holloway took manual control of the Retribution around her. The other ships were making their final approaches. The Sovereign was a burning wreck, held together by determination and prayer. The Independence had lost its entire forward section, but was still moving under emergency power. All ships, final countdown, Admiral Kessler transmitted. 30 seconds to simultaneous detonation. It's been an honor serving with you all. The Velthari Central Node loomed ahead, a structure so vast and complex that human minds could barely comprehend it. This was the brain of the collective consciousness, the focal point of an intelligence that spanned galaxies. 10 seconds, Kessler called out. Holloway placed her hand on the detonation trigger. Through the cracked viewport, she could see Earth in the distance, blue and white and beautiful, even as alien harvesters stripped away its surface. 5 4, 3 2 for Earth. Holloway whispered and pressed the trigger. 17. Nuclear explosions bloomed simultaneously in the heart of the Velthari debris field. The collective consciousness screamed across dimensions as its central node disintegrated, taking with it the coordinated intelligence that had conquered 1,000 worlds. In the silence that followed, debris began to rain down on Earth like falling stars. The electromagnetic storm hit Earth 30 seconds after the fleet's sacrifice. Commander Marcus Webb felt it as a physical wave, washing over the ruins of Seattle and shorting out every piece of electronic equipment for hundreds of kilometers. But more importantly, he could see its effect on the Velthari forces. The crystalline aliens suddenly stopped their coordinated movements, standing frozen like statues waiting for orders that would never come. Now, Webb shouted into his radio, hoping the other resistance cells could hear him through the interference. Hit them while they're blind. Across the globe, the effect was instantaneous. In London, Captain Elena Vasquez led her squad out of the underground tunnels, plasma charges in hand, targeting the confused Velthari work units that had been systematically dismantling Big Ben. In Tokyo, Colonel Hiroshi Tanaka emerged from the subway system with a team of engineers, carrying experimental weapons powered by car batteries and improvised capacitors. Webb's own team moved through the alien processing center that had once been Pioneer Square. The Velthari harvesters stood motionless, their cutting beams inactive, their collection systems offline. For the first time in days, the mechanical sound of Earth being consumed had fallen silent. Rodriguez, Zhang, set charges on the primary processing unit. Webb ordered. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they reestablish network connectivity. But as his team moved deeper into the alien facility, Webb began to notice something disturbing. The Velthari weren't completely inactive. Individual units were beginning to move again, but without the coordinated precision of the collective consciousness, they wandered aimlessly. Some continuing their programmed tasks, others simply standing in place. Commander, Sergeant Rodriguez called out from across the facility, "You need to see this." Webb joined her at what appeared to be a storage area. Massive crystalline containers lined the walls, each one filled with a glowing liquid that pulsed with faint energy. But it wasn't the containers that had caught Rodriguez's attention. It was what was floating inside them. Human beings, dozens of them, suspended in some kind of preservation fluid, their bodies showing signs of biological modification. "Jesus Christ," Webb whispered. "Are they alive?" Rodriguez checked her scanner. "Vital signs are present, but different. Their cellular structure has been altered at the molecular level." One of the containers began to glow brighter, and the figure inside, a woman in her 30s, opened her eyes. They were no longer human eyes. They were crystalline, multifaceted, reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The woman pressed her hand against the container wall and spoke, her voice somehow carrying through the crystalline medium. "Help us. They're not processing humans for raw materials," Webb realized with growing horror. "They're converting us into something else." Before Rodriguez could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The Velthari units were reactivating, their movements becoming more coordinated as backup communication nodes came online. The window of opportunity was closing fast. "Set the charges," Webb ordered. "We destroy this place and everyone in it, sir. There are hundreds of people in those containers. If we can free them, look at them." Webb pointed to the nearest container, where a man's face had begun to shift and change, crystalline structures growing beneath his skin. "They're not people anymore. They're becoming part of the collective." Rodriguez hesitated, her finger on the detonator trigger. In that moment of hesitation, the converted woman in the container spoke again. "The network is damaged. We can fight it. Help us remember who we were." Webb stared at the woman, seeing something familiar in her altered features. "Sarah Kim," he whispered. "Dr. Sarah Kim from the Colorado complex." The woman what had been Dr. Kim nodded slowly. "Yes, still remember, but not for long. The conversion is accelerating. Can you resist it?" "Some of us can. The network is broken. We can choose." Her crystalline eyes focused on Webb with desperate intensity. "But we need help. Need you to sever the connections before we lose ourselves completely." Webb looked around the facility, seeing dozens of containers, hundreds of partially converted humans. If even some of them could resist the collective consciousness, they might represent humanity's only hope of understanding Velthari technology. "Rodriguez, change of plans. We're not destroying this facility, we're taking it, sir. The Velthari are reactivating. We don't have the firepower to hold this position, then we make do with what we have." Webb activated his comm unit, broadcasting on all frequencies. "All resistance cells, converge on Pioneer Square. We found something the aliens don't want. U.S. to see." The response was immediate. Across Seattle, surviving human forces began moving toward Webb's position. Not many, maybe 200 fighters total, but armed with electromagnetic weapons that could disrupt Velthari coordination. The aliens responded in kind. Processing units throughout the city began converging on the facility, their movements becoming more coordinated as the collective consciousness reasserted control. But without their central node, they were operating on backup systems, slower and less efficient than before. Webb watched through the facility's windows as the first wave of Velthari forces approached. Crystal-armored soldiers moved in perfect formation, their plasma weapons charging for combat. Behind them, massive harvester units lumbered forward, repurposed as assault platforms. "This is gonna be it ugly," Rodriguez muttered, checking her weapon. Webb nodded, then turned back to the container holding Dr. Kim. "Doctor, if some of you can resist the conversion, can you help us fight back?" The partially converted scientist closed her eyes, and Webb could see her struggling against something inside her own mind. When she opened them again, there was more humanity in her crystalline gaze. "The containers can be opened from the outside, but once we're free, no guarantee we'll remain ourselves. It's a risk we have to take." Webb began entering the release sequence for Dr. Kim's container, knowing he was either freeing a valuable ally or unleashing something that could destroy what remained of humanity. Outside, the first Velthari plasma beams began hammering against the facility's walls. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. Dr. Sarah Kim gasped as the preservation fluid drained away, her partially crystalline body collapsing to the floor of the container. Commander Webb caught her, feeling the strange warmth of her altered skin, no longer entirely human, but not completely alien either. "The network," she whispered, her voice stronger now, but still carrying an otherworldly resonance. "I can feel it trying to reassert control, but it's fragmented, confused." Around the facility, Webb's team was frantically releasing other containers. Of the 300 humans they freed, roughly half retained enough of their original consciousness to resist the collective programming. The others, Webb tried not to think about what they'd been forced to do to the others. "Doc, we need to know, can you access their systems?"